Hi, my name is Christine Hanley, and today I will be discussing the Battle of Sunda Strait and the Burma Railway. So a lot of you probably don't know where the Sunda Strait is. So I got this little graphic here. So if you look and see where this red box is over here over by Jakarta, that's actually the Sunda Strait. It splits two islands of Indonesia, formerly referred to as Java, which is part of the Dutch East Indies. So a little bit of background on this battle. The Australian light cruiser, the Perth, as well as the Dutch cruiser, the Evertonson, and the U.S. cruiser, the Houston, were all damaged from the Battle of the Java Sea on February 27, 1942. So they all pulled into port. The USS Houston only had 6 out of its 9 guns that were operational because the aft turret was taken out by the Japanese. The USS Houston, the Perth, and the Evertonson received orders to transit through the Sunda Strait to the southwestern portion of Java on February 28th. They were unable to fully rearm or refuel at the main port of Batavia. The Evertonson was actually delayed because of this. They delayed in transit for an additional hour. So the two ships, the Perth and the Houston, set out, and they only expected to encounter Australian corvettes. Unfortunately for them, the Japanese Imperial Army's Java invasion convoy happened to be entering the Batam Bay. And here's another graphic depicting the Batam Bay. That's also the location of the Perth and the Houston. So the Japanese Army's the Java invasion convoy was also escorted by the 5th Flotilla as well as the 7th Cruiser Division. So in total, we're talking 1 light carrier, 1 seaplane carrier, 5 cruisers, 12 destroyers, 1 mine layer, and 58 troop ships. Around 11 p.m., the Perth sighted a ship and they challenged it. So for those of you who don't know what challenging is, in the Navy, when you see a ship, you call over the radio and you basically ask them to identify themselves. The ship responded and it was incomprehensible. They couldn't figure out what they said, but then they fired 9 torpedoes. This ship was later identified as a Japanese destroyer, and the Houston and the Perth opened fire. So the Evertonson, like I said, was an hour behind. So by the time it caught up with the Perth and the Houston, the battle was well underway. The Evertonson actually tried to avoid the battle, but she encountered 2 Japanese destroyers in the southern Batam Bay. So the battle actually concluded on 29 February, a little bit after midnight. So for the Japanese, 1 mine layer sank, 4 troop ships sank, 1 cruiser sank. 10 Japanese were killed and 37 were wounded. The Allied forces definitely took the brunt of this. All 3 of the vessels actually sank. 1,071 were killed, and 675 of these sailors were taken as POWs. One of these POWs actually happened to be my grandfather. He was on the USS Houston when it sank. He was a chief pharmacist mate, which is kind of similar to today's corpsman. They don't actually have pharmacist mate in the Navy anymore, but he was basically charged with medical stuff. He was captured by the Japanese after being tossed in the drink, as we call it. So he was in the water for 9 days. And then he was transferred to several different Japanese work camps. One of them that he worked at was the Burma Railway, which is also known as the Death Railway. So the Death Railway is 158 miles long. It connects Bangkok, Thailand to Rangoon, Burma. There were more than 180,000 Asian civilians and 60,000 Allied POWs that worked on this camp. It's estimated that 90,000 of the Asians and 16,000 of the Allied POWs died during the construction, which is why it was called the Death Railway. So a little bit of history on the railway. Construction began in September 1942. It was completed 2 months ahead of schedule in October 1943, so it was built very, very quickly. So following the Japanese defeat at the Battle of Midway in June of 1942, the transportation of supplies and troops became hazardous around the Malay Peninsula. It was actually 2,000 miles all the way around, so the railway offered a much safer alternative. Um, so conditions during the construction for the POWs, the construction camps were established every 5 to 10 miles. There were 200 men in each one of the barracks. They were allowed a 2-foot wide sleeping space, and the barracks were constructed of bamboo poles and thatched roofs. It was situated in the jungle, so obviously with what they had, sickness was rampant, and it was exacerbated by maltreatment and starvation. The Japanese were known to be extremely harsh and punitive. My grandfather used to tell a bunch of different stories. One of them happened to do with when he was giving medical assistance to somebody, and he got butt stroked, which is where you take the butt of the rifle and you hit somebody with it. He got butt stroked in the face, and he still has the scar from that. And then in another instance, there was somebody from one of his camps that was suffering from malaria, and he wandered off camp, and he was gone for like 2 days. And he came back, and the Japanese had him dig a hole, and then they shot him, and he fell into it. So as you can see, the conditions in these camps were not great, and the Japanese were widely known for their brutality. So that's all I have to say. Have a great day.